This is Story Recapped. Today, I'm going to explain a horror, mystery, sci-fi film called Antiviral. Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. Sid March sits in front of a large billboard of famous celebrity Hannah Geist. Outside the Lucas clinic while checking his temperature. Later, a man named Edward arrives at the clinic for an appointment. In the waiting room, a woman seated beside Edward guesses that he must be a fan of Hannah Geist. Sid observes Edward from a monitor in the office before deciding to pick him as his next client. When the client enters the office, Sid remarks that he understands Edward's fascination with Hannah because she looks perfect. Sid notes that Edward doesn't seem to be just a casual fan, so he offers Edward an expensive package of a virus that the clinic purchased from the celebrity. The package is a form of the herpes simplex virus, which Hannah acquired during an affair with a female celebrity years ago. Edward attempts to impress Sid with his knowledge about Hannah by mentioning that she wears special underwear because of her deformity. Sid then suggests placing the infection on the left side of Edward's lip to appear as if Hannah kissed him because she had the infection on the right side of her mouth. When Edward agrees, Sid grabs a syringe and injects it into Edward's lip. As Sid leaves the clinic after work, he goes through a routine check to ensure that he's not carrying any item that belongs to the clinic. When he gets to his apartment, he speaks to Jane, the manager, to see if she can postpone the daily alarm test. Sid notes that he's sick, so he needs to sleep. Jane informs him that she'll start with the top floor so that Sid won't hear the alarm until 11 a.m. In the morning, Sid checks his temperature and takes several pills while eating breakfast. On the TV, a female talk show host interviews Sid's boss, Dorian Lucas, about the people's fascination with celebrities. The host suggests that the people's addiction to famous people has become unhealthy, but Lucas dismisses her concerns. As the interview goes on, Sid opens a secret compartment in his closet to reveal a console. After placing a vial into a slot, Sid turns on the machine and waits until the screen displays a distorted image of a woman's face. Sid uses the console to manipulate the image. At work, Sid operates a similar console while Lucas discusses the machine's function to potential investors. Lucas explains that the ReadyFace console analyzes a virus sample and translates it into a face graphic to exploit the human brain's sensitivity to facial patterns. The resulting image represents the structure of the disease and becomes the face of the virus. Lucas notes that the machine renders the virus incommunicable so that the company can control its distribution. After Lucas's presentation, Sid waits in line for a virus package with his colleagues, Top and Mercer. As they wait, Sid overhears his colleague's argument about Hannah's deformity. Mercer contends that Hannah needs special underwear because she doesn't have a vulva, but Top thinks it's just a rumor. Top asks Sid to clear things up, thinking that Sid once took a genital wart sample from Hannah. However, Sid tells him that Derek was the one who took that sample. After getting his packages, Sid turns around and sees a pale-looking Derek waiting in line. Later, Sid convinces a woman to get the new flu from Area Noble. Upon learning that she'll be the first to have the flu, the woman accepts the virus. When the woman leaves, Sid injects himself with the same virus before leaving work. The next day, Sid visits a shop that sells meat grown from celebrity cells to see Arvid, the owner. As Arvid cuts a piece of meat, Sid is bewildered that people still don't consider eating celebrity meat as cannibalism. Arvid notes that the law allows it because they're just selling muscle cells, but he wonders what will happen if scientists start growing whole celebrity bodies in a lab. Arvid claims that he can make it happen with proper funding. Arvid then tells Sid to look at his cell garden, where he cultivates cells to grow skin and muscles. Sid then discloses that he's there because he cracked the Area Noble flu, but Arvid notes that the disease already went public a few days ago. Arvid advises Sid to get ahead of the others if he wants to get paid. When Sid arrives at the clinic, Top informs him that Derek has been arrested. Later, Lucas tells Sid that there was an unlicensed ReadyFace console found in Derek's apartment. The police concluded that Derek was using it to bypass the copy protection of the clinic's virus samples to sell them to a piracy group. The console came from the clinic, and there's another one missing. He asks Sid to report to him if he finds out anything about the missing console. Sid is then assigned to visit Hannah at the Mayerson Hotel in the place of Derek to get a sample of the virus infecting her. When Sid arrives at the hotel, he comes across an employee of Volan Tesser, Lucas Clinic's rival company. Sid reminds him that all of Hannah's diseases are exclusive to Lucas, but the man notes that he's there for another celebrity. Upon reaching Hannah's hotel room, he's greeted by her manager, Dev. Sid heads straight to the bedroom and takes a sample of Hannah's blood. Before leaving the hotel, Sid goes to the bathroom and injects himself with some of the celebrity's blood. Sid immediately feels the symptoms of the disease when he arrives at the clinic. While speaking with a client, he becomes nauseous, so he asks Mercer to take over before heading home. At home, Sid immediately uses the console to bypass the copy protection from the virus. While waiting for the machine to process the sample, he experiences a severe hallucination and sees his body hooked into a machine. In the morning, Sid wakes up hearing someone banging on the door, but it soon stops when he doesn't respond. When he checks his console, he discovers that a component has been damaged. As he prepares to go to work, Sid notices a rash on his arm. When Sid stops by Jane's office, she notifies him that a man named Portland is looking for him. On Jane's TV, the news reports that Hannah died from a disease. Jane notes that Hannah's family refuses an autopsy because they're waiting for a specialist from Germany. Later, Sid visits Arvid to ask him about Hannah's death. Arvid notes that she went overseas, but nobody knows how she contracted the disease because none of her entourage was infected. Arvid remarks that her death must feel personal to Sid because he was one of the last people to see her alive. Arvid asks him if he stopped by to sell Hannah's disease, but Sid claims that the clinic doesn't hold deadly pathogens. Sid then asks Arvid if he knows anyone who could help him replace a component on his console. Arvid tells him that he might know somebody. When Sid meets with Arvid the next day, Arvid notices him walking with a cane. Later, Arvid asks Sid about the disease ravaging his body, so Sid claims he's infected with the Michael Felix virus that he sold. Arvid takes Sid to a club to meet Levine and asks him to fix his console. Before introducing him to Levine, Arvid tells Sid to wait in the hallway, but Sid decides to enter a room and look around. Inside, Sid finds a screen that features a naked Hannah begging him to let her go. As he inspects the screen, Hannah tells him that she'll do anything he asks. When Arvid comes back for Sid, Arvid explains that the screen is a new franchise that's slowly becoming popular among the celebrity-obsessed masses. Sid finally meets Levine. But Levine doesn't have the component that Sid is looking for. Levine promises to get the part the following week, but he asks Sid for payment right away. Sid is confused because he never discussed the payment with Arvid, so Arvid explains that he promised Levine that Sid would give him a sample of Hannah's virus in exchange for the component. Sid tries to leave, but Levine's man grabs him and beats him up. Later, Arvid takes samples of Sid's blood and expresses his disappointment about Sid's refusal to share the virus with him. He promises to find a doctor who will help Sid recover so he can continue working for him. Afterward, Levine takes a sample of the rash in Sid's forearm. Sid wakes up on the street the next day. While having coffee at a diner, two men introducing themselves as Portland and West tell Sid that they're talking to him to meet someone. Sid refuses to go with them, but Portland hints that he has no choice. The men take him to a secluded house, where Dr. Abendroth examines his condition. Abendroth asks Sid if he's having delusions of grandeur. When Sid tells him that he hasn't, Abendroth warns him that the virus can produce elaborate hallucinations. Dev is also present in the room to witness the examination. Sid sees Abendroth putting his blood sample in a portable console, so he warns the doctor that the virus might destroy his machine. Abendroth explains that the virus was designed with a security measure to prevent analysis, but he managed to bypass it. Later, Dev takes Sid to a room where he discovers that Hannah is alive but is still sick with the virus. After he introduces himself, Hannah asks him if he has started bleeding from his mouth. Sid says it hasn't happened to him yet. Hannah notes that she couldn't sleep at night because she dreams of suffocating when the blood collects in her throat. Dev later explains that the virus might be an assassination attempt, so they faked Hannah's death to prevent further attacks. She reveals that the disease was a modification of a virus they sold to Lucas Clinic years ago. Hoping to find a cure, Dev asks Sid to find out who modified it. Sid notes that he's broken a ReadyFace console at home, but he needs to fix it. Dev promises to provide whatever he needs. Later on, Abendroth tells Sid that his interest in Hannah goes beyond his professional duties. He reveals that he's grafted skin grown from Hannah's cells on his arm because he's a devoted admirer. He surmises that Sid is also Hannah's admirer because he could have taken her blood sample without injecting it into himself. Abendroth then points out that sharing a death with Hannah is a powerful bond. Sid, however, contends that he doesn't want to die from the disease, so Abendroth gives him some antiviral pills to slow the infection. That night, Sid wakes up and finds out that he's starting to bleed from his mouth. When he goes to work the next day, Sid asks the clinic's archivist to check the sales history of Hannah's Bermuda flu. The last sale was made 2 months ago, and the last man who took out a sample was Derek. After work, Sid waits for Arvid outside his shop. When Arvid comes out, Sid threatens to inject him with his blood and asks him to reveal what he knows about Derek's illegal transactions. Arvid claims that Derek hadn't sold him anything in a year. Arvid suddenly attacks Sid and forces him to drop the syringe. Then, Arvid tells Sid to stay away from him because his disease is attracting a lot of dangerous attention. Sid decides to break into Derek's place to find clues about his last transaction. He finds an electronic device hidden inside a box, so he takes it. Before he could sneak out, the landlord arrives to check on the apartment. Sid walks past the landlord and flees while covering his face so he wouldn't be recognized. When he reaches his apartment, Jane notifies him that Portland has left him a package. Upon checking the package at home, Sid discovers that it contains a component that he needs for his console. Sid immediately installs the component and inserts Derek's device into a port. When he activates the machine, Sid is greeted by Derek's face on the screen. Days later, Sid goes back to Abendroth for a checkup. Sid tells the doctor that he can no longer move and think properly because he's tired all the time. Abendroth informs Sid that his friend investigated Sid's findings on Derek's device and discovered that Volin Tesser recently patented a modified virus. Abendroth suspects that the virus was the source of Hannah's infection, but he's confused by the company's decision to patent the virus if they intended to kill Hannah. Afterward, Sid visits Hannah in her bedroom and finds her sleeping. Sid touches the blood on Hannah's pillow and smells it. He then attempts to cover her mouth with his hand, but Hannah suddenly wakes up and chokes from the blood in her throat. Two men abduct Sid when he gets home that night. When he wakes up, he finds himself in a room with large posters of Hannah's face. Levine talks to him through a speaker and informs him that he intends to capitalize on Hannah's death by recording Sid's last moments so Hannah's fans can see how she died. Sid tries to escape when Levine and two other people enter the room, but a man immediately subdues him. While recording Sid with a video camera, Levine asks him to cooperate. Sid's condition gets worse as days go by. He coughs up blood and experiences hallucinations of Hannah. When Levine checks up on Sid one day, he grabs a syringe and stabs Levine in the mouth. As Sid tries to find his way out of the facility, he comes across a room with Volin Tesser magazines featuring Hannah on the cover. He leaves and finds himself in the waiting room of a Volin Tesser clinic. Soon, a guard and a nurse arrive to subdue him. However, Sid grabs the nurse and takes her hostage by threatening to infect her with his blood. Later, Sid contacts Mira Tesser via video call to negotiate a deal. He tells Mira that he knows that her company patented the virus to get around Hannah's exclusive contract with Lucas and sell the disease as a Volin Tesser exclusive. When Sid asks Mira if there's a cure, she notes that it would be costly and they have no responsibility for his condition because he acquired the virus on his own. Sid tells Mira that he has something to offer in exchange. That night, Sid visits Hannah's house to inform Abendroth and Deb that Mira will stop by the next day. In the morning, Mira brings a doctor to examine Hannah. However, Mira tells Dev that Hannah's condition can no longer be cured. Dev threatens Mira with a lawsuit, but Sid tells him that they can both benefit from Hannah's tragedy. He hints that he knows where to find the technology they can use to make more money from Hannah. Soon, a virtual reality version of Hannah appears on a screen to promote her Afterlife product line, which is offered exclusively by Volin Tesser. Inside a lab, Mira shows investors the Afterlife capsule where they replicate Hannah's body and keep it alive so that they can infect it with new viruses and sell it as a part of the Afterlife product line. As Mira goes on, Sid, who now works as a chief technician for Volin Tesser, removes a panel from the pod to reveal a large handle that appears to be covered by human skin. After Sid injects a virus into the handle, Mira tells investors that she will announce the nature of the new disease at the company's product conference at the end of the month. When Mira and the investors leave, Sid cuts the skin on the handle and licks the blood pouring out of it. Inside the capsule, a deformed clone of Hannah appears to be sleeping peacefully, unaware of the diseases being introduced into her body.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.